Welcome to Deep Conversations Podcast. I'm your host Ryan Stewart, and today I'm blessed to be here with the CEO and owner of Glam Empire, Miss Gina J.
That's what they say.
Okay, you got the rhyme with it. But before we get into this business that you got, with the beautiful showroom of clothing I've seen on your website.
Thank you.
Can we talk about that? I want to talk a little bit about your upbringing and what got you into fashion.
Oh, my upbringing. Okay, so my name is Gina J. I'm the CEO and founder of Glam Empire, a women's fashion and lifestyle brand. I was born in Newark, raised in East Orange, New Jersey by my grandparents and my mom. I think that fashion just came to me naturally. I think it was like an outlet for me, being the only child. Even when I was like in high school, my freshman year, they had like cooking classes and sewing classes. So I took those classes. And I was like mad because then they end up switching our school over to merge two of the high schools together. And I couldn't no longer take my sewing class. But what else did I do? Oh, yeah. So I went to college for criminal justice and business. Couldn't nobody tell me I was going to be a fine lawyer or a judge. But that's not what God had planned. What my sophomore year in college, my mother passed away. So I had to like redirect. And during that redirection, I ended up going to cosmetology school for hair. Because I used to always, so that's why it's called Glam Empire, because one, my name is G, and it's 4 letters that start with a G. So in Glam, I just felt like it just represented me and the things that I love, whether if it's in fashion, whether if it's in beauty. And so I ended up going to hair school because once my mother passed away and they told me that I couldn't go back to school because they hit me with like this huge bill because I didn't sign my promissory note for my loans. And I'm like, even that part of not having guidance or like the proper people in place to let you know what you need to do when you're taking a break from school. But either way, God put me on the path that I'm supposed to be on. So like I used to do my friends' hair, my family hair. Even for 8th grade social, I used to do hair and I dress up my friends. So, so I guess it comes from me even being a little girl dressing my dolls up. I don't know, but it just morphed into who I am. And even like my family and like my mom, I had asked my dad like some years ago, like, what was it that you loved about my mom? He was like, your mother was the flyest. So I'm like, it must have just been in my DNA, like watching my grandmother. She stayed in the mirror. My cousin, she's very vain. My uncle, he's just, fly guy. So I guess it's just embedded in me.
I don't want to get too deep too early, but I was listening to something with TD Jakes, and you said your mother had passed when you was in college, and before I started this, my grandmother, we were like really really close, and before she had passed, I mean, she would just always say, "You need to do something with your voice. You need to get on the radio. You need to figure something out because you can't let that, go to waste." And I'm once I started, she eventually ended up with cancer and she had passed away. But I was listening to TD Jakes.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and
we have a similar story. We'll get into that, but I lost my grandmother too.
Yeah.
Right before I opened my storefront. So I dedicated my store to my grandmother because she was the first person that used to pour into me. She's the first person that told me that I'm gonna be a millionaire, and I believe it. So whenever I have hardship, I hear that voice.
That's where the title of this podcast came from, because me and her, we used to always, even when I would get off work, I would go over there because my grandfather had passed a few years before her, and we would like, I would go over there after work, and we would just sit there, and I was like, when I'd be leaving, I'm like, we always have like deep conversations. So when she passed, but I was listening when she passed, I'm like, that has to be the title of it. But I was listening to TD Jakes, and he said you have to understand the spiritual world. This is why I know just what you just said about your grandmother. That's how I know it's confirmation. But he said you got to understand about your spiritual world. He said when you're planning on going into your purpose, he said God has to take somebody from you because they have to be on the other side. He said they got to be on the other side that you can communicate with. And I sat there and I was listening, and and he was like, because he said it's tough to say. He said, but you have to understand that they couldn't help you on this side. There's stuff that you can't see that they had to go and they had to communicate with God, and then they could guide you your steps further. And I was sitting there and I'm like, how I'm scrolling through Instagram every day. How the hell did this pop up all of a sudden? You know what I'm saying? But
it was a sign.
Yep. And that's why, like you said, when you have hardships, those things just always come back, and it's like, all right, stay focused. Stay focused. Just keep on going, because it's something that our visions, we know what we want to do, and we see it in our head. And it's just, we have to, I got a funny question for you. You said with, you learning, you dressing up your doll and stuff like that. Do you have pictures, or do you remember pictures of you of clothes that your parents put you in that you just hated?
Them Easter clothes, them big old poofy.
I was gonna say the Easter clothes.
The big old poofy dresses making me look like a porcelain doll. Yes, with the socks and the patent leather shoes. Yes.
I know my dad's gonna see this. My dad's gonna see this interview, but it's a picture. It's got to be from the late '80s, early '90s. And I guess that was just the style. You know what I mean? I look at my dad and I'm like, yeah, he a cool dude. He know how to dress. You know what I mean? But it's 4 boys. It's 4 of us, 4 sons. I'm like, 4 boys. You had us, and him too. So I'm like, this definitely was Easter. We all had red slacks with red suspenders with like a white dress shirt, and I'm like,
I knew the suspenders was in there.
what are we doing, man? Like what? And you sitting over here with this Temptations afro. What are we doing, man?
Yeah, I was the 4 heartbeats.
I do. I want to talk about, what's your story? Why did you want to start a clothing brand and call it Glam Empire?
Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, when I went to school for criminal justice and business, things always come full circle, right? So after cosmetology school, I applied to work at the police department in my hometown, and I worked overnight, and I just strongly disliked it. So while I was there, I was researching. I'm like, I have to use my tools and do something that I love and that I was passionate about. I knew that with me doing hair, I had a chair, I did hair, but building a clientele at the time was like very difficult. So while I was at the police department, I used to just research how to start a business, how to start an online business. And then I ended up going to Barnes & Noble because I love to read. And I picked up a book, How to Start an Online Business for Dummies. So I read that book cover to cover. And then I just started researching how to start a business. And then Glam Empire was born. When I came up with the name of Glam Empire, of course, like G for Gina, being glamorous, you know, and building an empire, like really wanting to, even from young, I always knew that I wanted to be different from my family members. I always wanted to be the opposite of everything that they were. So that was even the reason why I ended up going to school for criminal justice, because my family was like, they were in the streets. You know, my house used to get raided. It was just chaotic. And me growing up as the only child, I'm like, I want something different.
Yeah.
I want something better for myself. And I wanted my circumstances to be different. So even from then, I knew that I wanted to build something for myself. So that's how I came up with Glam Empire. And then even today is like wanting to empower women to, you know, in success and leadership, young girls, you know, people are always looking at us, looking to what we're doing, you know, being Black, being a woman, you know, being a family member, being a friend, being somebody that can help uplift others. Because, you know, I didn't always have that. I feel like I was always encouraging my friends, my family, because, you know, my grandmother was always hardworking. It was like, it was very split in my household. So like my grandparents, they were working people. And then like my mom, my uncles, like they were in the streets. My mom suffered from substance abuse. You know, I felt cheated out of that too, because my mother passed away when I was 19, but she was getting clean. My mother was a functioning addict. She used to love to do hair. She was, you know, very glamorous, you know, very powerful. She loved people. She loved kids. I just feel like that was her cadence. And it like, now I'm just like her legacy. Like, thank God I'm here, you know? So that's how I started Glam Empire. I started just being crazy ambitious. Like, I've been working since I was 14 years old, 2 and 3 jobs. Even when I be like packing my orders and stuff, I'm like, I used to work at UPS, FedEx, all them jobs, you know, overnight, like, you know, really hustling, really on the grind. I feel like that's a lot of what people don't see about me or know about me, because they just think like, oh, Gina got it together. And I really don't. Like, I come from very humble beginnings, hardship. Like, when I talk to people, I really understand like different spectrums of life. So,
and I think, you know what, and it's sometimes it's, you know, when people see you have your own business, or people see you know that you're trying to do things, sometimes a lot of people don't, that's all they see. They don't think, even if they tell you something, they don't think that it's like, that's another reason why I wanted to have this platform, because it's like, we are the same. You know what I mean? You know, us, you know, us looking at like we a lot of us come from backgrounds where it was hard. You know what I mean? I remember, I'm gonna tell you a quick story, but I remember I must have been in I must have been in trouble, because I was sitting upstairs in the window and I was looking outside, and I was seeing all my brothers and all the friends around the neighborhood go down to the park. So I can't remember why I was in the house. Maybe I just say that I was in trouble. You know what I mean? But,
you just know you was in the window.
yeah, you know what I mean? So I'm like, but I remember where we was at in that neighborhood. It was rough. You know what I mean? Thank God that my parents got us out of there when they did, because we started going that way. You know what I mean? We was every single day. We had cops coming up with the horses up to the house and all of that. But I remember that specific day, I was sitting in the window and a car had pulled up in front of the house. And I was just sitting there, didn't think nothing of it. He pulled up about 10, 15 seconds. And 4 guys came running up the street. 4 guys came running up the street. I mean, and when I say they shot this car up, I mean, and for me, I probably was 10 or 11. They tore this car. I mean, it was probably 15 seconds they were shooting.
Wow.
Then they lit the car on. They put the gasoline and lit it on fire, and I was just.
And you seen all of this out the window.
Yeah, but I could just remember. It was like a numb feeling. Like I didn't move. I wasn't like when the shots went off. I didn't like jump. It was just kind of like you was just kind of like in a trance. You know what I mean? And then I just remember that I felt like I kind of snapped out of it when the cops got there, all the lights and stuff pulling up. Because I do remember my mom coming outside and calling my brothers because she knew they was outside. But I just remember sitting there. But it's like those kind of like scenarios and stuff. It's like we was growing up around people who was actually people they see on TV. Those were neighbors and stuff that we hung out with. Them people was just that's what it was. So we were just as scared as other people, but we just had to deal with it.
We became accustomed to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like literally.
Mm-hmm.
Like gang banging, all of that different stuff. Like we became accustomed to it. We start to begin to think that it was normal, like this was a way of life, until you start to see, like, no.
Yeah, and when my parents moved us out of there, I was like, it was weird at first. You know what I mean? Because they moved us out to the outskirts, kind of like in the suburbs, and I'm like, I'll be thinking about it now, and I'm like, thank God my parents were like, we gotta get y'all out of here because y'all gonna be. We was all around the same age group, me and my brother. So it was like we were like tight. So it was like, nah, we go in the same school. Somebody arguing with a brother,
right?
Fighting. So it was just
4 boys. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Now you're
4 black boys.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So it was, yeah. And then when I got into high school, I was in high school by myself. So now I'm just automatically angry. You know what I mean? Because it was just coming up. It was just always.
I would have been mad too.
Yeah,
Where my protectors at?
Yeah, I'm like, I'm in school. I'm like, man, ain't nobody. I didn't talk to nobody probably until senior year.
Wow.
I was just kind of like we was talking about off camera. It was like I ain't talking to nobody. I was just like, that's just who I was. I was just. I know a lot of people from school probably be seeing some of this stuff, and they like, Ryan got a podcast. What the hell?
That's right.
Yeah, it's like they probably like he ain't say a word to nobody. But now, what would you say your brand personality is?
My brand personality is me. Like I'm full of personality. I love people, so it's like for the fly girls, for the sophisticated, for the elegance, for the women who like to shine. So that's my brand personality. I think also my clients, when I started to begin, like when I first began, I didn't even know what my niche was, like who my niche market was, until I opened up my store, which was a blessing because they seen a Black woman, a Black girl, and they're like, it was in a mixed area, but I would say predominantly white area that I put the store in. I used to have like Black doctors, Black lawyers, Black professors, Black teachers, business women, hairstylists come into my store, and they wanted to pour into me because they like, you look like us. Yeah. And we haven't even seen this since we had our businesses here. So it was like I was like breaking the mold while I was there, and they poured into my business. They loved it. They loved to shop. They loved to look good. They loved to spend money. They was going to their conferences. They was taking flight. So yeah, I always say like I am Glam Empire. And I am the personality behind Glam Empire, but also my customers, like, when they come in, they're excited to shop, and I'm excited for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you said that you opened your storefront in 2015, and you was telling me off camera, you said it wasn't like a lot of kind of like What was you saying? That kind of like social media outlets and stuff that you
It
could.
wasn't like a walk in the park. Like for me, even now, I'm still like a one woman show. And I always tell people like building a team is important, but it wasn't a lot of resources. Like when I started in 2012, it wasn't no resources, you know, like I really had to figure it out. I really had to study. I really had to research. I really had to go to the library and go to the store. When they say like all the information is in books, all the information is in books, you know.
And I see reading in school.
Right. When you in school, you don't like when I was in high school, I wasn't like a big reader. And then when I got to college and they tell me how many books I was gonna have to read to try to be a lawyer, I'm like, oh no. This ain't happening. Like I was a mathematician when I was in like high school and like when I got to college. Now don't ask me about math.
I know, neither. Nope.
But even like when I opened my store in 2015, the resources that we have in 2022 where people are like educating people, it was not like that. It was hard. It was difficult. You really had to like focus. You really had to research. You really had to figure it, like just figure it out and wing it. And what comes to mind for me is when I opened up my store, people thought that I made it. I was just learning. And it was like people would come into my store like uninvited guests and advice. And I was just trying to still figure it out, you know?
That's your humble spirit though. You know what I mean? Because people can see, a lot of times people can see stuff on us that we can't see. You know what I mean? Because you just focused on moving. You know what I mean? It's like I just gotta focus and I just gotta move. But other people be watching you, even when you don't think, even when you don't think they are.
Which is true because I think that I have just been moving. Like even in 2012, I was just like moving. Once I got the website up, it was like it just moved. It was like people was excited because they didn't even know like, okay, in 2012, like a website, you really thought that this is just what celebrities do. You know, like I really didn't even know how to build a website. That was even like crazy because I done had 2-3 graphic designers spending thousands of dollars on a website and it didn't work properly. I didn't even know what platforms to run my business on until later on. So it's like it's like those intricate things, like you really have to pay attention to. Those are things I didn't learn in school. I didn't know anything about a website, web development, marketing, you know, like even with like when I started my business in 2012, people say now like, oh, Gina, you should have been the face of your business. And like I was saying off camera, I've always been very shy, very introverted to myself, but I've always been like business oriented. So I could do all of the things behind the scenes. I can build the business. I could read the books. I could do the research. I could do those things. But putting me in front of the camera, I ain't going to do it. You know? So, like in 2012, I had models like looking up how these other websites from big department stores, how their websites is like structured, you know, trying to figure out like, okay, how it's supposed to look. Is it supposed to be a white background? It was even hard for me to find a fashion photographer in New Jersey. When I first looked up a photographer, I thought he was from New York. His work was like immaculate. I thought he was in New York. I thank God for placing the models that I had in my life because they were dedicated. I used to pack them up in my car. Like I said, it was no photographers in Jersey, fashion photographers in Jersey. I thought I was going to find one in New York. He was in Philly. So I had to drive 2 hours away.
With them in the car too.
With them in the car. With my merchandise. With my clothing rack.
Yeah.
I had to ask my cousin to come and do their makeup. Yeah. It was like hustle and bustle. It was grind. And I was working overnight.
Mm. At still at like UPS still?
No, I was at the police department.
Oh oh yeah, you ready to chase somebody? No, I'm playing.
So, I had to be there. I think at the time I was working 11 to 7. So it was like I would just be getting home, dropping them off, come home, no sleep. Like when I sleepless nights, no sleep. Come home, take a shower, eat something, go to work. I mean, I would catch a little nap while I was there.
I feel you. That's the thing. Like you said, when you got your storefront and you cut that ribbon, that was literally like the beginning. You know what I mean? But for people, it's like they automatically think when you got a storefront, money is flowing, and that ain't
the money was going, like it was just going so fast as it was coming in, it was going out. Because that's another thing that people don't tell you. When you open up a storefront, now we're talking about double bills.
Yeah.
Double rent, double light bill, double cable,
double
getting
stress.
help, double stress.
Yeah.
Weight up and down, not eating, not sleeping, just trying to like really grind it out. And people don't see that. Like I would stay, people would like my family, they just to this day they like, oh, they like I was just the workaholic. I didn't care. But for me, when I had my store and I had the keys to that store and I cut that ribbon, it didn't feel like work.
Yeah.
I used to be like, I could do this for free because I loved it. Like I really loved it. I felt like it was like one of the biggest accomplishments that I had made because I did dream. I thought I was going to open up a hair salon. And eventually I am. I'm going to put them license to use that I have.
Yeah.
But Glam Empire, oh my God, it has taught me so much about life. Like I would have to travel to the trade shows for my clothes. New York City is not really where you go for like wholesale merchandise. Like they have like a really small section, but like where you're building like a clothing brand, it's more so for sourcing. So if you need to get things made, if you need to put things into production, if you're sourcing buttons, fabric, zippers, leather goods, sneakers, you name it. But, all of that other stuff is on the West Coast. And then you have to go to trade shows. So, I'm like hustling and bustling. I'm going to trade shows. I'm traveling to the West Coast, to get my clothes. I'm running a store. I have these models, I'm scheduling photo shoots. I'm the janitor. I got to come in, clean up. I'm doing merchandising. I got to make sure everything is tagged, everything is steamed, everything is merchandised. I got to make sure my mannequins are dressed. I got to make sure the inventory is not only online with the details, writing out the description, writing out what it's made out of, pricing, breaking it down. Then we talking about, that's just online. Then we talking about my POS system in the store, putting all the items in the POS system, making sure it scans correctly. Let me tell you a quick story. When I first opened, thank God I had a soft launch, like a soft grand opening, like a launch and a grand opening, because when I had my grand opening, I thought I put everything in my POS system the right way. No, everything, I scanned everybody's, purchases out. After my grand opening was over, the money disappeared, it wasn't connected to my bank account.
My God.
So thank God that they were family and friends. So I called everybody like, hey, I need you to pay. I need to pay over the phone. It wasn't connected to my bank account.
Oh my God.
So they would have just had thousands of dollars of merchandise. And this is I wasn't even fully open yet to the public.
See, and I was going to see, and I was going. One of my questions. One of my. I was going to ask you because I'm like, as I was reading your bio, I'm like, you know, how well would you say that you cope with the stress and the long hours of being the owner and overseer of your brand?
Okay, so how I dealt with stress when I was younger is not how I deal with stress now that I'm older, because of the trials and the tribulations that I dealt with in my store. So I was like, 25, young and thriving at that time. I'm 35 now, so the stress is different. Then I loved it. I was able to balance it because it felt like second nature and it was fun until I hit the hurdle of, okay, I had been in the business for almost 3 years and it was almost time. I had to make a decision like, okay, like we talked about those bills, everything started coming like chipping at me. I couldn't keep up with it because like as fast as the money was coming in, it was going out. It was such great responsibility. And I was just so hungry and so ambitious and I just wanted it, that you hear those stories of people like sleeping in their car, grind out, doing whatever you got to do to get it. So the year before, like I looked at my financials and I just couldn't nobody tell me, oh, Glam Empire isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Right. So when you talk about stress, I didn't really feel like the pressures of like the stress until after I closed my store. And the stress is now, I got a therapist for that.
Yeah.
So let me go back to when I like the year before I closed my store. I went to my aunt and I was like, I had went down to nothing. Like I literally lost everything. I went to my aunt and I was like, I want to save my store. Can I come stay with you? I thought it was going to be short lived. It wasn't. It was long. I gave up my apartment. My bills was like through the roof. My credit went to crap. My car got repossessed. I was in the darkest place of my entire being, like in my entire life. I didn't think that I was even going to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like my aunt I used to go in her bathroom. I didn't, like I said earlier, I was very prideful. I didn't even want her to see me cry. And people used to always think that I was just so strong and I never cried. And but I'm very like prayerful. So I went into her bathroom. I turned the shower on and I felt myself crying. I was crying from like the pit of my gut because I'm like, I wanted this so bad and it felt like everything just came tumbling down and it just folded. And it was like everything that I worked for had disappeared. But I also remember me praying a prayer to God. You can't pray to God for certain things and they not happen. I used to tell him like, if it's anything that's not serving me, take it away. And like, that's not for my better good. And things just start leaving. So even when I was in that dark place, I felt like God had planted me. So I thank him for that dark place, because when I moved in with my aunt, I felt like I had nobody before that. My grandmother passed away 7 months before I opened my store. My mother passed away when I was 19. They were the pillars. They were the glue. They used to always tell me, I have older cousins and aunts, but they used to always tell me, you're the one. Like, you're next in line. Like, even my uncle to this day, he'd be like, you're the one. And I used to feel that pressure. Like, I don't want to be no chosen one. Like, you know, and he'd be like, no, you're the one. You know, you're the one. And I didn't understand that. But when God planted me in my aunt's house, it was so necessary because I needed that time. It was like he was breaking me down to build me back up. It was like, okay, you lost, you think you don't have nobody, but your aunt is right there. I had, you know, when we talk about being an it girl, to save my store, I sold all of my luxury goods. I was in heavy into Chanel, Louis, everything gone. I sold it to try to sustain my store for the dream. Like, that's how much I believed in it. I was like, this is what I got to do. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it back. It was a long run, and it was a long hiatus because after I closed my store, I felt like I had lost myself. I felt like I had lost my identity. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't want to work another job again. After you work for yourself, you don't work for nobody.
So my whole story right now. It's that's how you was just saying. When I've been at my job for 11 years, and I know what I want to do now. You know what I mean? I know what I'm, with this, and it's opened up opportunities for me that, I could have never imagined. You know what I mean? Now I've been blessed I'm about to start a sports television show on Comcast. So
congratulations. That's dope.
So, but here's the thing. When I say how miserable I've been at this job for the past 2 years, but what that is what I know now. Because when stuff starts bothering me, I get quiet. Like, I get really quiet because I'm thinking, you know what I mean? And I'm trying to figure things out. So, I mean, I'm like, I got to get out of here. I know what I want to do, but I just need to do it. So the beginning of 2022, I just remember just sitting upstairs in the room. It was nobody in the house, and it was just me. And I'm like, Lord, I know what I want to do now. You know what I mean? And a prayer don't even have to be you closing your eyes, you getting down on your knees. You could just be walking around the room, just talking.
You just speaking.
Yeah. And I'm like, Lord, I know and I remember like it's yesterday. I said, I know what I want to do. I know what I want to do. I can't finish this job the rest of the year. You know what I mean? And if I do, I can't go into 2023 with this job. I know what I want to do. I'm just going to put my head down and work and work and work. And I said, all I ask is if you get me out of this job by December 31st. And I left it alone. I just went on about my business and did what I was going to do. About a month ago, my boss came to me and she was like, Ryan, this job is, things are happening with the job. Your last day is going to be December 16th. So I'm sitting in the office and I kind of started smiling. Like, I looked down and I started smiling. She was like, she was like, you all right? She was like, I thought you was going to be a little bit more upset. And I'm like, you don't even know what just happened. Cause I just went all the way back to January.
You just blessed me. I have a story for you too.
I'm like, you don't even know what just happened. So, and see, and that's when I know it's God working, because when situations like that happen, there's like such a peace that comes over you after a while. You could be going through so much stress and it's like you wore down. You know what I mean? But it could just be one little thing and everything it's like a storm, and then everything just calms down and it's just the waters are just right back to what it was. And since then, I ain't never been like walking in the office with my chest. Hey, I got 17 days.
Because you know why? You was just passing through.
Mm.
You learned everything that you needed to learn while you was there for now.
Mm-hmm.
It prepared you for your now.
Yep.
That's just like me last year, December. So after I closed Glam Empire, I didn't know what I was going to do. Eventually, I ended up going into the city and taking fashion classes because I'm like, I'm not fully giving up on my jeans. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
I wanted to just sharpen my skills. So I took classes in New York City for fashion. I started interning for like very prestigious fashion stylists, celebrity fashion stylists. I became an assistant. And then I started working in luxury retail. When I was in New York, I started working at a luxury retail store. I won't say their name on here. They ain't paying me. But I started working like their studio service department where it's like TV productions come, magazines, fashion stylists. In fashion, I'm like, I had an excellent job. It's 9 to 5. You don't hear that in retail. Weekends off. And then during the pandemic, they laid us off. Mm-hmm. I'm like, and the pandemic was a blessing because I'm like, Gina, I gotta get back into it because can't nobody fire me. Can't nobody lay me off. So I'm like, I started like really planting my feet, like listening to sermons, reading more books, listening to motivational speeches, like YouTube, and just trying to get myself back into the groove of things. Then I ended up getting a call out of nowhere and an email from my old HR supervisor. She was like, we have a position in Short Hills. I think you'll be perfect for. And I'm like, I'm excited because I'm like, okay, at this time, I didn't have a job. I was like, okay, this could be something that I'll do in the meantime to get my feet wet. Mm-hmm. So I started being a personal shop assistant while I was in New Jersey. And it was like everybody there loved me, but there was this guy, he said he's been with the company for 21 years. I'll never forget him. He was like, what you doing here? I'm like, what you mean I'm working? He's like, no, what you doing here? Like, you a rich girl. I'm like, this is luxury retail. What do you mean? He's like, no, I've never seen anybody like you, dressed like you, your spirit. You don't belong here. And then it was like other people used to say it to me too. And I'm like, God, I hear you. But I feel like he put me there because he wanted me to see the things that I was doing. Because I was working with very prestigious upper echelon people that had $60 million homes and boats. And they're coming in the store and they're spending $30,000 in one day.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So when I talk about like, earlier we talked about like being in the rooms, like really being in a room and commanding yourself like in a room, because my spirit and my aura and my essence and everything speaks for itself. Like my light just shines. I know that. So the woman that I was working with, she thought that I was going to steal her clients. I wasn't even thinking about her clients, but she gave me such a hard time to the point where it pushed me out of there. I wrote my resignation letter and nobody wanted me to leave. They were like, even my boss, he was like, you're so articulate. Like, I want you to stay. I'm like, I have to go. Mm-hmm. And then, so while I was there, I was already in preparation of getting my showroom, because when I was working in New York and I was assistant, I used to go to all of these beautiful, luxurious showrooms, and you had to have an appointment. And I'm like, oh my God, like, if I'm going to restart, I could start off on a smaller scale. It doesn't have a beat in the grand scheme of things. But if I do it, this is how I want it to be. And so while I was there and she was kind of pushing me out, because she was just like nasty. I even bought her a book. I gave her the book of the 4 agreements because I'm just like, I need an energy shift, because every time I walk in here, you're draining me. And so what happened was I had already signed a lease to my space. And I got under, when you talk about stress, I got under stress because I thought that job was going to be security. When it was one night, it's something about 3:00 in the morning. 3:00 in the morning, while I was stressed out there, Spirit came to me and was like, Gina, start looking for an office space again. Because I had been looking during the pandemic and I couldn't find nothing. I was just going to like wing it, figure it out. I started looking. I found my space 2 weeks. 2 weeks later from that dream, I signed the lease.
What?
Yes. 2 weeks later, I signed the lease. And when I tell you that my landlord, the owner of this building, has like been a blessing to me, I can't even. It's not even imaginable, because I had a crazy landlord when I leased my storefront. Mm-hmm. But to go back to the lady pushing me out and her attitude, and just like that, being stressed out and overwhelmed, I thought that it was going to be a security blanket. And then I ended up in this December 11th, 12/11/21. Last year, I was just like, I'm going, but I didn't know. I felt the heaviness because I'm like, it felt like me taking a huge risk again for my dream. I'm like, am I crazy? Like, you just lost everything from having that store. You just had to go sleep at your aunt's house on her couch. You lost your car. You lost everything from nothing. And now you're leaving this job and you have an office space. How you gonna pay your bills?
And but you know what? That's the devil messing with you too, because he know what God got for you. So the devil,
right? How you gonna pay your bills? But like I said, 3:00 in the morning, a spirit came to me and told me to look for my space. I got it 2 weeks later. After I lost that job, after I left that job, 3:00 in the morning, God, spirit, whoever came to me and was like, if I wanted you to have a safety net, I would have let you stay there.
See, and but what that was, he needed you to refocus.
Yep. And right now I'm here a year later.
And I always tell people, I say, if you don't, there's no way. I mean, the Bible says God says, just taste and see that the Lord is good. That's a bad boy, man.
He is faithful.
Yeah. Yep. And the things that God does things that we can't see. I mean, it's just, when we stressed out about stuff, he's in it. When we think he don't hear us, when we stressing out, we in places of self-doubt and all that kind of stuff. He's like, I heard you. I heard what you said, but I'm going to do it on my time.
Yep.
I don't care about making what you think and when you want it. I got it. Just believe. Now, I'm going to ask you this question, because this leads kind of into everything that we're talking about. From Gina, when she was a young girl, usually when we have goals, especially when it pertains to, something like, what you're doing with helping people, it tends to teach us about ourselves.
Right.
So, so Gina, from young Gina up until Gina now, what is one thing that you learned about you, mentally and spiritually that you just cherish?
Ooh, I think it's just so many life lessons there. Like I really had to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Um, I think that just really just learning myself, like my mindset, like having like that mental strength and that capacity. I think that that's what makes it all worth it because it comes with an enrichment of your spirit and your soul. Like whenever you go through things, you think like you really hit the end of the road and it's not. I always say like let God be your guide. And God has, I really keep God at like, if you keep God at the center of your life and at the forefront of your life, He will really see you through. And I think that even through all of my hardships with me losing my mom, losing my grandmother, being a young girl where my mother was, addicted to drugs, my father being absent, I out of all of that, those are the things that were necessary to help build who I am today. It helped birth me. If those things didn't happen, if my surroundings didn't happen, I wouldn't be this ambitious, driven young woman that I am today. Like now I have a story to tell. Like now I could really reach back to other young women that's like me that may have a similar story and say, like, if I got through it, you could do it too. Because the proof is in the pudding. Like my life could have been completely different. I could have had kids really, really young. Like, no disrespect to anybody who has, but that could have been my story.
Mm-hmm.
So I chose a different path. And I used to really be afraid of success. Now I'm ready for it.
Yeah, it's I I really appreciated this your openness. You know what I mean? Because I think it's necessary for women and men alike, to hear these things because I feel like a lot of us in our culture we tend to hold stuff in, you know what I mean, and we tend to
Mm-hmm.
go go through life with just dealing with it on our own, you know what I mean, and it's not a it's not really a healthy, it's not a healthy thing, you know what I mean, because this is why you got a lot of anger and shooting and all of this stuff going because people don't know how to handle that. You know what I mean? And for you, opening up with your story and everything, and like you saying, God being at the forefront of your life, is there was a everything that you seen, everything that you had had to deal with, and all of that. That's like God had a purpose for you, regardless of all of that was going on. It's like I want you to see this. I want you to know these people because these people that that I placed you with, they're gonna be the driving force of what I got for you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we talked about earlier with, you said your mother passing and your grandmother passing, they on the other side because they're like, all right, we see you, come on. You know what I
And
mean?
it's true because even in the summertime, that's another thing. Like it's always going to be something. It's always going to be obstacles. It's always going to be hurdles. It's always going to be a blockage, something that's going to get in the way. Like even in the summertime, I got into a really bad car accident. My car got totaled. I could have lost my life. Like I'm thankful to be here. My mother came to me in my dream and she's like, I'm always with you. I knew that I was covered because I was like, I don't know how. But she came to me and that was confirmation. So, we have those angels, we have those spirit guides. You're never alone. Like, we think that we are. I think, like, for me, even being like an only child, like, I have brothers and sisters on my father's side, of course, but I used to suppress everything. And I felt like I didn't have an outlet. So through creativity and through Glam Empire and doing something productive and really being purposeful, that's the thing, So, like, we're never alone.
Mm-mm.
Never.
No, it's where do you see yourself in business and for yourself in 5 years?
Whew, in 5 years, I'm like, time go by fast. In 5 years, I'll be 40. Yes, bring it.
I just heard something. I just seen something earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Where you answer this, but I just seen something earlier on Instagram, and it said in 8 years, 1980 will be 50 years ago. That hurt me because I'm like, I was born in
for the 80s babies.
I was born in 84, and I'm like, what? What? Nah. I'm not looking down that barrel of that shotgun yet. No.
So for me, in 5 years, I'm not completely sure what that looked like, but my faith tells me that by 40, I'll be able to, like, really reach my mark and hit a milestone. I think my goal is just to be impactful. And, like, that's really what I stand for. Like, I love people. I love building relationships. I love encouraging people. Mm-hmm. So, like, I want to do more things like this and be on podcasts, speaking engagements, panels, going to schools to empower the youth. Of course, like, I'm building an empire. Like, Glam Empire is not just Glam Empire just for clothes. No, like, I really want to build an empire. I love interior decorating. I still love hair. I love all things glamorous. I really want to open up a day spa for women to come and just relax, release, rejuvenate, meditate, to just sit with themselves, to connect with their higher self, like, within pampering, I really, like, I think that this is a spiritual journey. Mm-hmm. So in 5 years, I just think that I'm going to just be scratching the surface. Like, I think I just want to make my mark and put myself out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, and you're going to do it because you have a spirit that is like it's a calming spirit. I don't know, you know what I mean? I was telling you before
Thank you.
Before we got on the podcast where it was like, I'm a shy person. I'm always, I before every podcast I'm nervous, but once we started talking, it was like, the
walls came down.
It was like, you do. I mean, you and hearing some of your story, you've got the drive to do it. So whatever you gets in your mind, you're gonna do it.
Thank you so much. You too. Thank you for having me on Deep Conversations. Thank you for allowing me to share my story, to bare my soul. You're the first person to hear it. You're the first person that I really shared this story with. Like, some of my friends to this day don't know that my mother, suffered from substance abuse. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not something I talk about, because when my mother passed away, she passed away from an asthma attack, and she was, like, getting clean. Wow. But my upbringing, it was hard. Mm-hmm. Like, that was hard. I even had to encourage my mother, like, we could do this, like, do this for me, not knowing that it's a disease. Mm-hmm. And I used to be embarrassed, but even now, as a woman in my 30s, I understand my mother a lot more now. Yeah. Because you have to think about it. Whatever trauma she experienced or whatever she was, I have a respect for her now. Because I don't know what she covered up, what she bottled up, what she suppressed, what she went through. All I know is that now I'm here and, you know, like I'm her legacy. I'm able to carry on her name. My mother's name was Regina. She dropped the Re and named me Gina. And, you know, and now, you know, I could live on and do those things, you know. So it's like me going, and I always say thank God for therapy. Like I have a therapist, because the things that she may not have had to, like, she didn't have those resources. I know she didn't. You know, everybody would go to liquor, drugs, whatever. So it's like now going through different stresses, going through life, knowing what it looked like, anybody could, you know, go to that. Yep. It's the easy route.
Yeah, easily. Yep.
So I'm thankful. Yeah, a blessing. I know that you're gonna make it. I know you and your wife will kill it. You're gonna build that brand, and if you need help with anything, I'm here.
Yeah, we definitely gotta stay connected. We definitely gotta network together. Where can they reach you on your platforms and your websites?
So personally, they can find me at Gina J _ on Instagram, and then my business is Glam Empire _ Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, you name it. Yeah. That's what you can find me.
Right. Now look,
and my website, www.shopglamempire.com. I offer styling services. You can come personally shop with me, be a VIP. Come see me.
Yeah, I might send my wife down, because y'all got some fly clothes. I was looking at that website. I'm like, this thing, and she was like, that's nice. I'm like, I know.
And I keep a lot of stuff in here that I don't put online, because I like for things to be exclusive for my customers. So they really feel like, yes, like anybody got this.
Yeah, yep. Again, Miss Gina, I appreciate you for coming on this podcast. You have been
thank you.
Blessing.
Likewise.
You're on YouTube, baby.